Hi, this is Dr. Cook. I wanted to give you a little chance to look at the material this week, and the purpose of this video is that I'm going to cover the requirements for the critical analysis essay and look at some of the various aspects of it so that you have a better idea of what it is that we're looking for. Ultimately, what I and the English department wants from you is that by the end of this essay, you should be able to pick up an article and then look at it and evaluate it on some criteria such as author credibility or the evidence used, language, and be able to say whether or not it's a credible author, whether the article is good or bad. So that's the ultimate goal. So when you go out into the real world, when you're looking at other courses and picking up articles and deciding, is this an article that I want to use for a paper, or even if it's just watching a news broadcast and deciding for yourself whether or not that is actually a credible and viable newscast with information, that's the purpose, the ultimate goal of this essay. So let's look at some of the guidelines together, and then I'll give you a little bit more explanation. So you should know where everything is by now, and I'm releasing 1 week at a time so that you only have to worry about that 1 week to concentrate on. So to get to the critical analysis essay, obviously it's in week 1. There are only really 2 boxes here. One is for submissions and the other one is the critical analysis essay. And we'll pull up the guidelines. All right, so in short, let me talk about this. You don't need anything approved because I have given you the 2 sources. So I've taken away this step for you to make it easy. I've given you an article and I've given you a TED Talk. And it's a TED Med Talk. And if you look over here to the left, you will see Physicians Get Addicted To. That's your article. And then there's a link to the TED Med Talk, the harm reduction model, etc. Okay, so you don't need to worry about getting anything approved. It's automatically approved for you. All right, so you can cut off the topic and the sources being approved. You do have a pre-writing, a planner to do, which will be next week. I have added, because the link didn't work because it was under week 2 originally, so I put the planner at the bottom underneath the articles. So it kind of goes in order. First you look at the guidelines, then there's a PowerPoint which explains this whole paper for you. Obviously it's good to look at the rubric and have a look at the sample essay to see what it's all about. Then you have your article, you have the video or the web talk, the TED Med Talk, and then finally you have the actual planner that you're going to be working on for next week to be submitted on Thursday. I do want you to pay close attention to APA. APA has changed, so if you took English 101 in the fall semester, APA is now changed to APA version 7, and everything in the course has been updated. All of the information has been updated, so really look carefully at the APA link. The formatting tutorials, very important to look at because the title page is now different. You don't have to have the running head at the top. You just have to have the page number. But the information that you put on the title page has changed. I'll go a little bit more about APA later. Right now, I really want to just cover the guidelines and the paper itself so you kind of know what to look for and what you're going to be doing. So it is a multi-paragraph essay, and it ends up being 825 to 1,375 words. So it's not super long for this actual paper. You do have to have headings for each section except the introduction, which is easy because we'll look at what you're covering, and basically each one of those things will be a separate section and a separate heading of the paper. Like in English 101, you did have the personal narrative if you just took the course. If you took the course a year or 2 ago, it was somewhat different. You did not have a personal narrative. But this paper should be in third person. There should be no you anywhere in the paper, and there should be no first person anywhere in the paper. So in terms of the content, you are going to begin with a brief summary that includes the title, the author, source, publication date, and the main idea of both sources. So this is a little bit trickier. This is something a little bit different than you might have done in the past. Because we're using the article and the TED Talk, you do have to address both of those in the introductory paragraph with your summary. So you're summarizing both, and I'll show you probably the best way to approach this essay in a minute. We'll look at the sample together. Basically, the summary, what is the text purpose and audience? You want to bring that into the summary. This is a requirement, so make sure you do address text purpose. And when we're dealing with text purpose, if we think back to 101 again, we talk about 3 types of purposes. We have persuade, entertain, and inform. So, make sure you figure out which one of these is the correct purpose. Then we have the different sections. So one section deals with author credibility, and I'm not going to read these questions for you now, but these are questions that you don't have to answer per se, but in your paragraph, you're going to write an entire paragraph on author credibility. You're going to look specifically at each of the sources. So was the author of the article credible, and was the speaker in the TED Talk credible, and how do you know? Looking at some of these other questions, you can bring this into this section of the paper. The next section deals with evidence. What type of evidence is used? So again, I think this second bullet is the most important. Is it relevant, sufficient, reliable, and accurate? If you are unsure of those terms, make sure you look it up. If you still have your 101 book, this would be a good chance to review it and to look at the 101 book again. Maybe even if you have your paper from English 101, the critical analysis paper or the analysis evaluation paper from the previous courses, you might be able to use that here because some of these terms were found in that. This really is a continuation of English 101, and this sort of is the segue into English 102. The next section deals with language, and again we have 2 questions, so this is going to be a little bit shorter of a section. And then finally you have your conclusion. Obviously you're going to have an introduction, and then you're going to have body paragraphs dealing with author credibility, evidence, and language. And then you are going to have a conclusion. So those are the guidelines. Look those over. There is a PowerPoint that walks you through some of the specifics, so I would suggest opening up the PowerPoint and giving that a look. You can either look at it here, or you can look at it through the other link. You can download all the materials from D2L. There's a button up here that will allow you to download it, and you can also print off everything, although I don't suggest printing off the PowerPoint because it's going to use a lot of ink. Let's look briefly at the rubric together and some of the things. So I'm going to have to download this because it is too small. There we go. Now we can see it together. So basically, author's name, title, source, year. You either have it or you don't. It's well organized. You follow APA format. So by the time we get to the final version, we'll have gone over the APA 7 so that you're able to do this correctly. And did you get to the word limit? And do you have 8 to 10 sentences per paragraph? Are they well-developed paragraphs? They might fall a little bit below 8 sentences, but you really don't want to have a 1 or 2 sentence paragraph. So that here is worth 20 of the 100 points. Your grammar is worth 30. So 50% of the paper deals with basically formatting issues, and grammar. The other 50% is the actual content. So we're dealing with the introduction. Does it have an appropriate thesis statement and a main idea? Then we have author credibility, evidence, and language. Lastly, you have the conclusion. So each one of those is worth 10 points. Should you not make the word limit, or it is full of lots of errors, then it is an automatic 0. And as per policy, you can rewrite the paper for a maximum score of 75%. But, I would really try to make sure 875 words is not that hard, and we have 3 sections that we're covering in this, plus the introduction and conclusion, and 2 articles. It shouldn't be difficult to get to this word count. So there is a sample essay, and I suggest that you look at the sample. I'm going to open it up and just show you. So this is APA 7. We'll go more about this next week, but you'll see running head is gone. So you just insert a page number, which is a lot easier. You have the title of the paper, which is in bold. And this time it's a little bit more towards the top of the paper. And then you have this information here. So that's what APA 7 looks like in terms of a title page. So you want to make sure that you kind of follow that. The nice thing is there's nothing at the top except the page number. So you don't have to worry about running head on the first page and then taking off running head and having your title all in capital letters. That's kind of taken away from you. On the second page, you do begin again with your title, but it's in bold. So I am going to read this to you because I want to kind of do it together. In the 2019 Washington Post article, A Uniquely Dangerous Outbreak, authors L.H. Sun and M. O'Hagan inform a general audience about the current outbreak of measles and its relationship to the controversy about vaccinating children. So we are talking about the first article here. So we do have the date, we have the source, we have the title, we have the author's names, and then we basically have the purpose to inform and the main idea. All that rolled into one sentence. So you want to kind of do the same. Now this goes a little bit further. Here is the summary piece of this. The article explains the large jump in measles infection in early 2019 and the concern of authorities about a widespread outbreak. The outbreaks initially occurred in areas where there is a high prevalence of parents opting out of vaccinating their children. The authors explain the views of those opposing vaccinations as well as the countering evidence provided by authorities on the safety and importance of measles vaccination. So that's the summary, so it's quite short. And now we move on to the next source. Another source, the website Measles Cases and Outbreaks from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, is a government site whose purpose is to inform American citizens about measles cases in the 2019. So again, we have the title, we have the actual source, and we have the purpose, inform, and the main idea. Now, the next couple sentences deal with the summary of that particular article. So how do we bring those two together? So the purpose of this is to evaluate it. We're looking at, did the authors of both of those articles do a good job? Was their writing effective? So the last sentence here is the thesis statement. Both sources are effective and provide credible information, but the CDC website provides the most up-to-date and bias-free information. So in the guidelines, they do talk about a compare and contrast. So you are looking, and maybe one is as effective as the other. Maybe they're both effective, but what are some of the good points and the bad points of each? And you're going to do that in a compare-contrast. All right, so the introductory paragraph, you have to introduce each of the articles separately, give a short summary separately, and then you tie that in together in the last sentence with your thesis statement where you're bringing both of them in and you're coming up with one sentence. So we know now that this person who wrote this paper feels that both sources are effective. So that's pretty positive. So each of the sections you're going to see that is going to be positive. So the author credibility, we have, again, you'll see that there's your heading, and it's centered and it's bold, and everything is double spaced. Don't add any extra spaces in between. So we have this here. We have about the authors of the article, and then we have finally a paragraph about the authors of the Center for Disease Control website. All right, so they're government authors. Now, I think it would be better to just have it as one paragraph, kind of like you have in your introduction. So you can talk about, make a topic sentence about the effectiveness. So both articles have credible authors, however, and then you can talk about the negative of the one, or simply talk about both being very effective. Then address each of those in that paragraph, and then you want to have like a concluding sentence. I wouldn't do like this necessarily, even though this is the sample. I would make it one paragraph, which is easier. The rest of the paper is done like this. So if you look at the evidence section and the language section, you'll see that everything is in one. What I, again, suggest doing a little bit differently is having a more general topic sentence, and then going into the details of support using the one article, then the next article, and again a concluding sentence that ties both of those together, and everything should be tied back to the topic sentence. So in evidence, if you think that they're both effective, then write that as your topic sentence. Then give the information from the article, from each of the articles, for the article in the TED Talk, and then have a conclusion that refers back to your topic sentence. That's the best way to structure your paragraph, and I think that really is the best approach for this paper. So you can look at the sample here, but I would kind of maybe really concentrate on the evidence section, excuse me, and the language section, because those are one paragraph each. Finally, you do have to have a conclusion, and that is part of the rubric to have a good conclusion. And then you have your references page at the end. So you'll have the information from the article that I gave you, and you'll have the information from the TED Med Talk. There really is not necessary to have anything extra for this. Just you can stick with the two, because you're evaluating each of those, so you don't need any extra articles to bring in here. Just stick with the TED Med Talk and the article that I gave you. So again, what is it that we're doing this week then? I would like you to read the article. I would print it off and make your notes. So you might want to look for evidence, credibility, take all the notes for the different sections, look for language, what was the purpose, really evaluate that essay. I would suggest doing that, and then taking notes on the TED Med Talk. So if you have, that's really the only thing. There's nothing for you to turn in for this week. There are 2 assignments for you to do, and I'm going to show them to you right now. So if you haven't already done it, back in Getting Started, week 0 submissions, you have the introductions discussion board. A lot of you have done this already, but not everybody has done this. And then there is a quiz, a pre-quiz that you need to be doing. So we're in week 1. If you were to go to week 1 submissions, I don't have an extra box down here, but if you click discussion board, it will take you to that particular discussion board. Or if you click the quiz, it will take you to the quiz as well. So those are the only things that have to be submitted, and they're actually due at the beginning of next week. So you still have a little bit of time this week, but please make sure you follow the calendar that you get those submitted. In the announcements, I did talk about looking ahead, and one of the things to look ahead was the essay planner, and so I'm going to bring the essay planner up right now for you and show that briefly. Well, I can talk a little bit more about that next week. The essay planner is more or less an outline. This is going to be worth points. It sort of counts as pre-writing, so it's worth 25 points. There is a rubric that is used, so please look at the rubric. The rubric's actually under week 2, so I wouldn't worry about it too much now. But this is what the planner looks like. So you're talking about each of the sources. And then again, you're breaking down author credibility, source 1, source 2, and then like your final statement, which author is more credible. And then evidence, source 1, source 2, which evidence is more reliable. And this is really just opinionated, but based on information from the text. And then same thing, language, discuss the language in the one, discuss the language in the other, and then which one is more effective. Okay. Finally, the whole thing is this last question here will help you come up with a thesis statement, because how effective is each source? So kind of going back to the last sentence in our sample essay. All right, so you can get a start on that if you want. So as you're reading the article and listening to the TED Talk, you could be working on this and filling it out. That particular paper is due next Thursday, so you have plenty of time. You have well over a week to do it, but I just thought it would be good if you wanted to work a little bit ahead. So I hope you now have an idea, or a better idea, of what the assignment is and how to approach it. You should be able to know exactly what it is that you're reading. You see the TED Talk. We've looked at the guidelines. We've actually looked at the planner that you'll do next week. Remember, all you really have to do this week is the discussion board. Reply to a couple classmates, and make sure you do the pre-test. Both of those are due next week. Okay? So if you have any questions, then please sign up for Remind, and you can text me. That's the easiest way. I am on campus here at Owens in my office most of the day, so if you're on campus, you can stop by and ask your questions in person. It's always nice to meet you face to face. You can actually see me here through the video, but I really don't know what most of you look like. If you can't, you can always then send me an email, or you can call my office number, which is listed under the contact information. And lastly, I can also meet with you virtually through Zoom, which is, as long as you have a camera and a microphone, we can kind of meet online. So don't wait. If you need help, I'm here to help you. It's just a matter that you reach out to me, and we find the best method for both you and me to contact one another. All right? So again, I hope you have a good rest of the week. Hopefully you don't have any more questions about this assignment, or if you do, it's not a problem. Just send me an email or contact me like I said. All right, then have a great week. I look forward to reading the rest of your introductions. I've gone through some of them and replied through a lot of them, but I have not finished them. And I'll also be looking at the online quiz. This is just a pass-fail. It does not matter what your score is, but it's a way for me to see that you are actually involved in the course, and it counts towards attendance. All right, have a good week. Thanks for listening.